But again, we'll get started now. Really appreciate the time spent either away from your desk or still at your desk, but appreciate the time sunk with us today. So I'm Scott Easton. I'm kind of a data subject matter expert for Novi. Have been here since I think October of 23, maybe. So a little bit over a year and a half. But my role is to really just help groups what data we have and how it kind of weaves into our greater goal. So with that in mind, today we're going to start out. This will be over evaluation and forecasting, really how to get a better look at some of the headlines that you see come across your desk and how to do it within the Novi toolkit. So that said, I'm going to begin with just setting the table of kind of how we look at the industry and how we've set ourselves up to hopefully give you a better look at what's going on. There's three things that we wind up doing. The first one is going to be what we'll spend the bulk of our time on today. And that's going to be kind of a data foundation. So that's the Insight Engine. We also have modeling software. So a lot of these analytics are driven off of an in-depth analytical software that helps compile a whole bunch of well attributes and spit out a lot more forecasts for both PDP and PUD. And then the last kind of piece of our value proposition is this intelligence tool. And really that's the outputs of the software and the data. It gives us things like inventories, calculations, and a lot of assumptions for break evens and pacing and basically a macro supply forecast. So having said that, today we're focusing on the Insight Engine. One of the main things that I want to impress upon folks is we believe pretty strongly in garbage in, garbage out. And so you can see on the left what this footprint is. What that's showing is where we're getting proprietary information from operators and then publishing it for all of our users. So to bring people up to speed, basically this past year, we've been extremely busy. We're almost up at 5 times the coverage that we used to have at this time last year. And so you can see a lot of information coming in. What that looks like for our clients is that the folks on the left tend to share all of their well level production with us. And so one of the key struggles in the industry is trying to get down to well level production in states like Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Ohio, where you have this reporting technique that people just kind of share big volumes of a number of wells, and then it's incumbent on data vendors to try and guesstimate what each individual well is producing. So you see everything lined out in red is going to be the net new for this past year. Ultimately, what that means for you is that we don't have to guess for those wells. We're able to expose the same production information that those companies use internally to model. All right. The last kind of piece, just to set the table, is our origin story. So I mentioned we have some really good modeling software, and it's taking in well characteristics like spacing and timing calculations, like extractions, and also completion design variables. And all of those are fed into a random forest model that's going out and trying to find lookalikes for all of these wells. And we use those lookalikes to help boost or moderate a lot of our forecasts. And so what you're looking at on the left is the error through time for the first 12 months on the forecast for the average Permian well. So the red is going to wind up being the machine learned forecast that we do. And then the orange is going to be if we take the same exact base data and load it into an Aries, a combo curve, or a PhD win, and just say, hey, auto fit what we think these wells are going to do. The net of it is that it makes a really big impact going out and finding true lookalikes that are in the same type of rock, that are completed the same way, that are spaced and timed the same way. These are huge improvements over kind of like the classic first look techniques that people have. So the net of it is, as we go through today, a big blurb was kind of on making sure that you guys got a better first look at evaluations and making sure that you had better confidence in forecasts. And so this is what we mean. These are the percent improvements that we've seen in each one of these basins when we throw it over the fence to some of our majors. Okay, having said that, just another PSA, making sure everyone knows that there's a questions and answers. So if you do have a question, feel free to throw it in. Definitely want this to be as interactive as possible. We'll also have questions and answers when we wrap up as well. The last component is I think a lot of folks might be joining us because of the great outreach that a lot of our marketing team has wound up doing. But this is all powered by our new intelligence team. And they're behind the scenes in creating a lot of reports for not only NA, but also key trends in the industry. And so when you see things on LinkedIn, on Reddit, on paid search and other avenues, this is the team that has rolled that up. And so just want to make another PSA for a lot of those articles are cataloged for you in what we call the content hub. And if you're interested in getting a list of these articles afterwards, please drop us a line. Emily and I are happy to set you up on it. All right. I'm going to shift gears. So what I chose to spend time on today, really a juggernaut in the Midland Basin, but something that stuck out to me, Diamondback has spent over 31 billion in acquisitions in the last year. And a lot of really, really big chunks of acreage. Of course, starting out first with the Endeavor acreage, which is going to be kind of that purple that's offset of all that Diamondback acreage. You can see I'm looking at it by original operator here. And then, yeah.
Oh, no, it's okay. Now it's working.
Okay.
Sorry.
Good deal. Yeah, just another reminder, definitely throw in those questions as they come up. But Endeavor here is going to be offset of that lighter pink for the Diamondback acreage. TRP, you guys will remember about a year ago, they wound up doing a swap where they took on this Southern Midland acreage in exchange for one of their assets over in the Delaware. And then finally, this Double Eagle is what has been most recently in the news. They do have quite a lot of northern acreage that they'll be taking advantage of. And then, if I remember correctly, they're going to be in kind of a drill co with Double Eagle's retained assets, which are down in the southern Midland Basin here. So, having said that, this is great fodder to understand not only core acreages, but also some of the step outs and see kind of where new entrants have been. And so we're going to start taking apart this for today. So one of the quick PSAs as well, hearkening back to just how we set the table, that proprietary information you can see is pretty strong on this acreage. You're looking about 40% of all the flowing barrels are coming off of this asset where we get actuals or daily production that we roll up into monthlies. And to look at it a different way, this tends to be more biased to the more recent wells. So even more impactful for folks that are looking to understand and contextualize results. You can see that 40% kind of holds true here, where the blue are going to be that proprietary advantage. All right. So interesting enough, on the left or on the right side here, just trying to get a little bit of context for who rules the roost here. And in this case, I'm going to switch it from log to linear. You can see Diamondback outpaces the rest of their acquisitions. Not surprisingly, they've got a lot more of kind of that core acreage. It tends to get a little bit more competitive whenever you normalize it than when you don't normalize it. But there is some really heavy regional bias in here. So one of the areas that caught my eye was what Hart Energy has really been kind of boasting here. And it's basically all of their Dean wells for Birch. And you can see really quickly if I wanted to get an idea. Oh, sorry. I need to zoom out here and show it in context for us. But getting a sense for all of these wells and the relative performance, I am going to drop this down and group it up by formation. And you can see really quickly that that Dean kind of jumps to the top. Okay, so this is in Diamondback's portfolio here, but we can also start benchmarking it against kind of who is getting the majority of the headlines. And so if we were going to zoom in to this Dawson area and just a spot check, we can also throw that on the map and say, okay, this is where all the Dean wells for Diamondback actually occur. What I can do is get specific to that acreage block and say, let's bring in everyone else here that's drilling Dean wells and see how we compare. So in this case, I'm going to take off my filter for operator. I'm going to put in a filter for Dean. And something to note is I'm leaving this first production year. So looking at all the wells that have started in the last 2 years. Okay. And if we want to look at it a different way, we'll look at it by current operator. You'll see a lot of those Birch wells that pop up, and I'll look at that by current operator here. So there's a couple things for good reason. Of course, we really appreciate our relationship with Birch, and they're doing amazing things for kind of mowing the Dean up here. You can see Diamondback is in a little bit different kind of space. They aren't immediately offset of those Birch wells, but you can see that Birch is definitely leading the charge here. If we want to go ahead and normalize it by lateral length and make sure that we're looking at it correctly, they definitely jump off the map. Whenever we look at Diamondback, really big footprint for them too, but they tend to be a little bit more in the middle of the pack here. Something that we found interesting was some of these recent pads for Diamondback have been a really nice kind of step in the right direction. So looking at the productivity tab here, I'm going to adjust this to show the EURs for all of the wells. And you can see Diamondback is trending upwards in the EUR race here. But then down towards the bottom, you can see that they haven't spent as much capital on their wells. So what I'm looking at in these bottom figures here is going to be the proppant per lateral foot. And blowing this up a little bit, you can see that Diamondback hasn't really pushed the amount of sand. In other words, we've only really tried about 1,500 pounds per foot here. So there might be significant upside here. The other thing that I looked at was just understanding if they were pushing as much fluid, and it looks like they're down towards the bottom half of that as well. And so we can imagine that they are trying to get a good look at this area, but they haven't really thrown their might behind producing this zone yet. So just some really quick ideas as far as how to take this apart. You can see they're kind of in the middle of the pack here as we showed previously. The EURs look pretty good, non-normalized, and then normalized, we tend to jump up a little bit as well. The other thing is they don't tend to be in what we'd consider like bad acreage or anything like that. So if we're looking at original oil in place, you can see that they've got some pretty good values here for oil in place relative to some of the others on our list here. And then getting a sense for some of the rock quality metrics. You know, TOC is in line with some of the competitors for higher and lower water saturation, and then maybe like a V clay, seeing if there's any issues there. So really quickly, I can get a sense for relative rock quality and start matching it up against completion factors to try and understand if we're being extremely capital intensive and trying to really produce, or if we're hanging back a little bit and might have room for some upside. All right. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. The other one tends to be, there's not as many headlines, but it's certainly a growth area. When we look at all of the wells that are coming on in the Midland today, about third or fourth on the list for counties is Howard County. There's quite a lot of activity here. And whenever we zoom in to the Double Eagle stuff that they just acquired, you can not only see that there's a pad that they completed, and I'll show you here. So this is a pad that they just started producing, right? So the initial production came right at the end of October. And you can get a sense they wound up drilling kind of this wine racked zone here. But this just came on. And then there's also some offset permits that we can kind of keep our eyes on. So getting a sense for how they're doing in this area, the top dog here tends to be Vital. So if I were to, let's see here, doing a quick reset here. This is a shout out for our kind of saved well lists. It really does a really good job of jumping you back into the place that you were before. So if you aren't taking advantage of that, do because life happens. And so here, I'm going to go ahead and take off the operator kind of tag here and just get a sense for who's offset of them. As I said, we'll see Vital really light up here. And same idea that we did previously. Let's just take a look at all of the wells that started in 23 and 24. And we see, these couple pads that are immediately offset here. Just trying to get a sense for how productive these are relative to their peers and if we could expect to see some of those permits get drilled up. So again, I'm going to switch this over to cumulative versus time. I'm going to look at the current operator here, and I'm going to drop in our forecasts. Okay. And if we want to take apart, I'll make this easier on everyone's eyes here. I'm going to make the lines a little bit bigger here for us. Great. So if we want to start taking apart this area, Vital, again, top dog in the area. They're super high on the EUR lists here. Their 20-year EUR in the area, about 375,000. And then if we look at Double Eagle, they'll be a little bit lower here. They're coming in right around 322. Pretty excited about this because when you look at normalized lateral length, you'll see them jump up above some of their peers. And so you can see kind of this per foot productivity metric. Right now, I'm looking at it in terms of a 20-year EUR. But of course, if I wanted to slide on down to a 50-year, I can do that as well. I should say 30. I'm used to doing 30, but some people might get crazy out there. Let's see here. So I apologize. There was a question that came in, and really want to encourage that from everyone else. The question is, where do those rock quality data come from, and how do you link them to each of those wells? So my song, thank you for sending that in. Those rock properties are something that are extracted from our partnership with a group called NewTek. So NewTek is a geologic shop in Houston, and they make basin models. They also do petrophysical calculations. As part of our partnership with, we have license to their grids, and we use them in Petrel. We drop in directional surveys and then extract out the relative rock properties. And basically, you're looking at all of those properties that are closest to the midpoint of each of these laterals. So for each well, you'll wind up having those extractions on the well level. So really, really good, good question there, and thank you for asking. Okay, so yeah, this again, I felt like was pretty interesting. So they are drilling relatively shorter lateral lengths than other groups in this area, and then you can probably see they're probably going to be about 2 sections for the offset permits that are right here as well. You can see their footprint here. Those dotted lines are going to give it away. But offset of them, there were these 15,000 foot laterals. And some of these productivity per foot, pretty exciting when you start extrapolating up past the 10,000 foot mark, because these are about 9,000. And when you start extrapolating past that, 10,000 mark, they definitely have some distance to them in terms of productivity. Okay. The other thing that we found interesting, so productivity here, and let's see here. Go ahead and do this by current operator. Great. And there's Vital versus a Double Eagle. Again, Double Eagle, this is kind of the first pad that they've drilled in the area in 2 years. Vital has drilled many more, and you can see that they aren't as high on the lateral length. Their proppant per foot is a little bit higher, so they've invested a little bit more there. And then, if I remember correctly, their fluid per foot is, there we go. Their fluid per foot is much lower here. So there could be a secret recipe in there for good productivity that they're bringing to this area because they are much lower than their peers. Okay. Okay. The last thing to take a look at was surprised to see truly how productive some of these Upton wells could be. So you see this footprint down here where this is definitely different kind of parts of the basin. This is pretty deep down here, but TRP versus a Double Eagle versus a Diamondback. TRP has kind of outpaced the competition in this area. You can see this normalized. You can also see very competitive with Diamondback that's in the area. And then, of course, Double Eagle down here as well. But it's obviously an area that all groups tend to invest in. So it does compete for quite a lot of, and you can see this clearly as I, color up by first production date. This is going to be the most recent, we'll call it vintage, right? But basically September to December, and you can see quite a lot of activity in this particular area. And the EURs kind of bear that out too, where it tends to continue to for capital there. All right. Same types of takeaways. So I always just try and get a sense for, capital intensity here. TRP, they've really decided on a particular completion design. I should take a second to kind of tell you what these are. So you have a traditional box and whiskers plot here, meaning that the middle kind of box tends to be the middle 50% of all values. But what winds up happening is we overlay kind of this cloud around that box to help you understand what is the distribution of values through some of those kind of ranges. And what that tells you is, Double Eagle really is kind of monotonic there, where they've kind of decided to be around 2,200 pounds per foot. Diamondback is bimodal, so in some of them they do 2,000 pounds per foot. Some of them are 1,600 pounds per foot. So you can definitely see that they've invested in these TRP wells. And Diamondback has still kind of experimenting with where they want to land that proppant per foot. And then you can see Double Eagle has largely kind of landed around that 2,200 pounds per foot. Looking at the EURs, let's get a sense for not only EURs, but also normalized per foot. And you can see TRP leads the charge here, Double Eagle and Diamondback, they're all pretty close peers there. And so you can understand, Diamondback knowing what they're going to get out of this particular area. And these are the two acquisitions, drillcos, JVs, and you can see why. Okay. So having said that, that's the end of the presentation for today. That's both Emily and myself are going to stick around for any questions. Any walkthroughs, we're happy to take a scenario and walk through it with you as well. But I want to once again thank everyone for their time today. We appreciate you investing it with us and hope to hear from you soon.